Hello and welcome to Inside Leominster. My name is Dean Mazzarella, Mayor for the City of Leominster. And yes, we're live tonight as we are each and every Thursday night. Thanks for joining us. We thank the whole crew here at Inside Leominster and LTV for coming in every Thursday night. I never want to forget them because it doesn't matter if it's what the weather is. It's a long day for them, and they sometimes have to come back to do the show. It brings them till 7:30. By the time we leave here, it's 8 o'clock. So we definitely want to thank them for their commitment to continuing to do our show. We are in our 25th year of doing this show. Started off with, Carl, help me through the cable companies. It started out with, what was the first cable company? You'd remember. Let's see. It was Twin City? What was it? Montechusett Cable. So we started on North Main Street. Then they were bought up a couple of different times, and then we moved the studio. We actually doing the show out of my office for a while, Carl. Remember that?
That's right.
Then we went to Manning Ave building, right?
Correct.
And where did we go after that? Here?
From there, here.
Here. So it's been many variations of the show, but we've only done a couple of pre-tape shows, and we've only skipped a couple. Thanksgiving, for instance, is a show we either try to do pre-tape the show, but we always try to bring you new programming. This is the show where we try to tell you what's happening in town. Maybe you're out in the community and you hear different people tell you different stories about things, and then you think, geez, let me validate that, right? Validate, and you call here and you ask the question. You can email us, dmazzarella@leominster-ma.gov. You can also text me. You can Facebook message me. You can Twitter message me. You can make a sign and stick it up in the front of your lawn. However it is that we need to communicate, and tell us what your subject matter is, and we'll get you all of the information. Anyway, we got a good show tonight, but we can't go anywhere unless we talk to the master himself as we send our drone up through the North Leominster traffic, through Main Street, and then a right-on day. Here he is, the famous, the one and only, the Art Report.
Well, first off, don't anybody believe him.
You have a following.
Anything else he tells you, you can believe, but don't believe that cockamamie.
You have a all I can tell you is you have a following. You know that.
Yeah, I do. It's the dog across next door. We don't have a pet, and I love animals. Next door has a beautiful beagle. His name is Kennedy.
Kennedy.
And every time I'm out, we came home today from a doctor's visit, pulled in the driveway, there's Kennedy sitting at the fence. They have an electric fence, invisible fences, sitting there patiently waiting. As soon as I come in, he sat down. That means I go get him a bone. I throw him up a bone, and off he goes with the bone.
And he thinks you're a hero, just like I do.
Well, that's what follows me around. Fleas and dogs.
No, you have I'm telling you, we have people, you know it. People say, hey, who's this Art guy? And that's why we got to get you on the show once in a while. Are you coming to the Cannoli Fest?
I hope so.
All right, because then
our schedule has been such.
Well, it's October 4th, is it, or whatever? But anyway, it's, let's see. It's October 4th, 5 to 9. We're going to be live. So people get a chance to see Art. See what you look like again for anybody that's new in town that doesn't know about the Art Report.
I think it's Halloween.
Nah, Halloween's coming up too, October 20th. You coming to that? Bring your grandson.
You know, I took him. Last Saturday. We had him overnight. Mm-hmm. He's 10 now.
Yes.
And I've been telling him all about my racing escapades back in the day.
Yes.
And they had the New England Antique Auto Racing exhibit set up at Ronnie Bouchard's Dodge dealership on Lunenburg Street.
I would love to go. See, I didn't know about it. I would love to go there.
That's too bad, because they had about 15 or 20 of the old-fashioned race cars. His museum was open, and his Talladega-winning Buick was there. And the neatest thing, I was trying to explain everything to Matthew on our way to it, and I said, I race with these guys. I know these guys. You're going to have fun. And we got there, and I drove in, and Bobby Bergeron, who was the tire changer on his big-time race car during the race days, saw me drive in, and he said, we're parking over where the old Thunderbird Motor Lodge was. I'll meet you over there. So I said, okay. I don't know why he wanted to meet me. So we go over, we park the car, we get out. Well, he's waiting for me in a golf cart, and he loads me and my grandson up. My grandson just thought that was the catch me out. Drove us across Lunenburg Street up to the dealership.
Wow.
And then Ronnie's wife, Paula, his widow, saw me come over. We were talking, and she brought us into the museum, and they gave Matthew a nice little 9x12 glossy, and I took him on the tour.
I'd love to get
and
inside
they started up to 47. His eyes have just started to come back to normal size. It made quite a racket.
Wow, I'd love to get in there. Is it open any set hours or?
The first and third Saturday of every month, 12 to 4.
Okay.
Great stuff in there. Great history.
No, it sounds it.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
So tonight you're going to have to get the song and the artist.
Well, now you're making it tough on the old.
Well, no, because I was listening to this song the other day and a couple of these this artist's songs, and I thought another person. Sometimes you can be, in on the A list, and then you kind of fall off because you just can't keep yourself reinvented all the time. And there are a couple of songs that this artist made, kind of like Aretha Franklin, made later on in his career, which was cut short to begin with anyway, but still made it and made a little bit of a comeback to sort of like when they would do the top, Casey Kasem's or Dick Clark's top 100 or top 40. So this is one of the comeback songs. So you'll get both, I'm sure of it. Here we go on Stomp the Art. Come on, you already caught in the trap.
Elvis Presley, please. Because I love you too much, baby.
Here it comes.
Why can't you see what she's doing to me? Suspicious Minds.
Yep.
Elvis Presley. I was looking at him the other night on YouTube.
Elvis, number
right
one.
Here, this downbeat. That's just classic song by him.
Listen to the music in the back.
Oh, that's what I mean.
Full orchestra.
Oh, great stuff.
A full orchestra.
Yeah. Baby, don't you know?
See that?
Yep.
That was a song. That was a comeback song.
Yeah, and his drummer, when he passed away, Ronnie Shipp, his drummer, went to work for Neil Diamond.
Oh, wow.
And now Neil Diamond has retired.
Yeah, he says he's going to come back, though. He said he's not going to stop completely, but I think they're going to stop that whole living on the road thing.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. I remember, it's funny you say that about the road. When Ronnie Bouchard was racing big time, I took the tour with him when he was running the 500-mile race at Pocono, Pennsylvania, at the big 2.5-mile super speedway.
Right.
And I went down there on a Thursday, and I followed him around for 4 days. And I'll tell you what, it's a grind.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he went to a card signing at a mall in Wilkes-Barre and stuff like that. You're nonstop.
It's work, constantly promoting.
He rests when he gets in the race car.
Imagine that.
But he was Rookie of the Year that year, and they kept him jumping.
Wow. Just incredible, huh? What a story.
Oh, it was. He had a great sense of humor.
And a great guy right to the end.
Absolutely. He even left a great quote behind. His brother-in-law, Eddie Flemke, was with him in his closing moments, if you will, and he looked up at Eddie and he said, "I guess this is one race I'm not going to win."
No.
And Eddie looked at him and said, "Yeah, but you let a lot of laps."
Yep.
Which I thought that's in his book, but that quote.
Just incredible. What a good guy.
Yeah, but he was. I used to write all his speeches for him, and we had to stand in line. He'd say, put it in the mail, send him a bill, which I never did.
Of course.
But had a lot of fun with him, and enjoyed his talent immensely.
Yeah, no, special guy.
And thank God it stopped raining.
Yeah, geez. I thought
God,
we were
what
going
a mess.
to float away.
Awful.
I saw manholes 2.5 feet off the ground. Just like a...
Oh, I believe it. They were pumping some kind of water off in back of the dealership there, down 13 by Hamilton.
That was from the last storm that made that pipe, it just caved in by the river. And
oh, okay. That's what I figured.
That takes all the water in from the other side.
Erosion.
So that was about $100,000 to fix. We had a blowout in the landfill, and because it has to be repaired in such a way, they have to replace the liner. That's $250,000 maybe to do that. So these storms have been very expensive for the city.
Thank God for your quote-unquote rainy day fun.
You got it. That's the whole purpose of it, right?
Yep. Crazy stuff.
It sure is.
We golfed today. It wasn't too bad.
Good. A little spongy out there, I'm sure.
Yeah, in places. They had them marked up pretty good. Yeah, they had them marked up. And we had some guests up there walking around with us, wild turkeys.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, I'll let you go, big fella. Keep
Over
up
and
the good
out.
work.
And as they say in North Leominster, it's been real.
It has.
Yes.
See you later.
Okay. That's Art Bartlett with the Art Report. He's on every week. And we have a whole lot to talk. We have an interesting subject today. We're going to talk about the 100th anniversary of the Spanish flu pandemic. But you may think, it doesn't sound like a very interesting subject. It is. And it affected almost everyone somewhere, somehow. Somebody knew somebody that was impacted by this. And we have members of the Historic Commission that are here to talk about it. And stay tuned because we have a lot to talk about. We're going to do photos of the week. Want to remind you, just in case you haven't smelled, I think it'll probably be tomorrow. If you drive by West and Church Street, you'll be able to smell the apple crisp cooking. And that is a serious weakness of mine. So I've been storing away counted calories to be able to indulge in a little bit of apple crisp with ice cream. So that means our signature meal and dessert and treat is the signature dessert and treat for the Johnny Appleseed Festival, the 25th of modern times. And that's coming up. It's supposed to be a beautiful day on Saturday. Lieutenant Governor will be out here between, I think, either noon and 2 or 1 to 3. I'll have to check my text. Anyway, probably the biggest event that we've had for the Johnny Appleseed Festival. Lots to talk about. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back of more Inside You. You can catch us at Leominster-MA. Really? I'm wishing on a star. But first, you can catch us live. Comcast, Verizon. You can also catch us live if you're streaming, if you want to tell a relative or somebody that used to live here, hey, you can watch the show and learn about Leominster and reminisce. You can catch us at leominster.tv. Taking a short break this time. Be right back.
And I wish on all the rainbows that I've seen. I wish on all the people who really dream. And I'm wishing on tomorrow rain will come. And I'm wishing on all the loving we've ever done. I never thought I'd see a time when you would be.
There we go, a little Wishing on a Star. Nice little song there. Huh? Nice song. Little, like all that symphony music in the back and the violins. It just, adds to the music. Anyway, Donald Piermarini is with us tonight, as well as Meg Kerrigan from the Historic Commission. And I'll tell you, if you ever want a wonderful experience, you'll think to yourself, I'll stop in at the Historic Commission. I'll go over there on a Tuesday or a Thursday, and I'll spend a little bit of time, 15 to 20 minutes. And once you get there, you will be just submerged in historic information. And the wonderful thing about the members of the Historic Commission is they know how to tell a good story. See, you can have all the ingredients of a good story, but you got to be able to tell the good story. You know what I mean? You meet somebody in life and they're like, wow, that's an amazing thing. Because you see, and that's one of the things about the teaching profession, right? You know that as being a teacher.
Oh, yes,
somehow
definitely.
or another, you have to make it interesting in life.
As possible.
A really good story, right? So anyway,
We have individuals that can do that very
That's
nicely, Mayor.
true.
Especially
Very
Rocky
true.
can.
Rocky's
and John
amazing.
Proietti.
John Proietti's,
John can
Mike's
tell
really
a
good at
beautiful
it.
story.
Chet's good at it.
Oh, Chet's
right?
good at it.
Yeah.
Pat LaPointe is
and
good
you're
at
good
it.
at it. So we've got a lot of great people, right? I mean, you saw you saw Lou Tossi's display over at the historic?
Oh, yes, the milk
Yeah, with the
bottles.
society, the milk bottles.
Oh,
I
yes.
never ever knew, A, that he had a collection like that, or two, that there were all those farms in Leominster. That really says something, right?
It surprised all of us.
It's the farming industry was huge here. Well, obviously we were a takeoff of Lancaster, kind of
Yes.
a spin-off of Lancaster.
Yes.
I always think that we got the best of the land. But Lancaster, got Nashua River, we got Nashua River, but they didn't get the 12 hills of Leominster. They didn't get those.
The beautiful farmland.
Exactly, they didn't get that. And of course, they still have a beautiful town. I'm trying to take it away from them.
They
right?
got all the Indian raids too.
Exactly. So they did get a lot of the history there, right? I mean, they did. But they cut off a valuable part of Lancaster to give to us, just as they did. How many towns really made up Lancaster at one time? Sudbury was part of Lancaster.
Well, we
Was
know
it the
Clinton
seven towns?
was. Clinton,
Right.
yeah.
But remember the book? It was the 7 towns of Lancaster or something like that.
Something like that, yes.
And wasn't, if you go in on Route 20 and you see that old, I don't know if it's a church or a town hall, and it's in Sudbury, that white building. Wasn't that the exact building that was at downtown Leominster near the common area?
At one time?
At one time.
Oh, yes.
Yes, it was like almost virtually the same building.
Yes.
So
well, we had quite a history.
we did, and
And
even
Pat
though
LaPointe is proving it to us
I
by
know.
going into that history.
Yes.
Wow, amazing.
And even though we lost a lot of the historic buildings, we didn't lose them all. And remember that time in downtown Leominster when they were afraid of the mall's coming. What are we going to do? They're going to the mall because there's parking. People have automobiles. They're not using, they're not walking anymore. They're not using the bus. We have to do something. So, the thing was, well, we got to start tearing down some buildings to make room for parking. But they didn't tear them all down, which was a good thing. We didn't lose them all for fires, right? We lost a lot of properties on Mechanic and Water Street, right? We lost the theater. We lost that strip of retail on the left-hand side of Water Street, the pharmacy. We lost the Moose, right? We lost all those buildings along. What we should tell people is behind like the Bank of America, those weren't all parking lots. Those were buildings.
Yes.
All the way
little
across.
shops, all little shops.
Yeah.
And of course, the only building that's still standing is the old Rialto Theater.
Right.
On Main Street.
Which they've done a good job converting
yeah.
it to a church and trying
Yes,
to
they
restore
have.
it.
Yes.
And so that's still there. But there are, remember the Richardson building is still there, the Scanlon building is still
Yes.
downtown. But what I think people should visualize if they weren't here at the time, didn't live through it, is all those things that are parking lots now pretty much weren't parking lots. They were buildings.
Yes.
And so they lined Mechanic Street, wall to wall, just building after building
yes.
that touched. And so same thing with Water Street, all those buildings touched. And we didn't need parking really until the advent of the automobile.
Yeah.
And then things started to change where people were a little more mobile and they didn't have to come downtown. And I remember Jack Shoes. Moved to the mall,
Yeah.
right? Moved to the mall.
Yeah.
Student Brothers, I think,
Student
did they have a
Brothers,
place
yes.
at the mall as well? So
Yeah.
people were starting like, okay, everybody's leaving downtown.
Parent shoes.
Yeah, they're heading to the mall. Woolworths and Newbury, everybody's going to the mall. That's where it's at. And here we are now, and the malls aren't as popular, but the downtowns are coming back. How interesting it is.
Oh,
anyway,
yes.
What goes around.
That's the excitement and the great story of history in Leominster, and I'd like to think that we've got like the best piece of what came from Lancaster and 26 or 27 square miles of just beautiful land, and the borders are still like a town if you live in the neighborhoods.
But there's
And,
also another aspect, Mayor, and that is the people who live in town,
Mm-hmm.
the politicians, the business people, they're the ones who really made Leominster what it is today.
Right, they had the vision. They
They
understood.
had the vision. Many of the developers, they built on the exterior,
Mm-hmm.
but most of the big business people, they stayed in town,
Right,
and the
right.
businesses in Leominster grew.
Yeah, people hung in there, and
Yeah.
that's a good thing, right? It's been really good, and it's still good now. So, let's talk about the 100th anniversary of the Spanish flu pandemic. 100 years,
Exactly 100 years today.
and how many people lost their lives
175 in Leominster.
in Leominster, but across the country?
Okay, this is where the numbers stagger you,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
We all think the Second World War was the most violent and part of our
Most
world's
casualties,
history. Okay,
yeah.
you had a 6-year period, 1939 to 1945, you had 50 million people die.
That's
This
phenomenal.
Spanish flu pandemic, Mayor,
Yeah.
in 10 months, 50 million people.
Just incredible.
Amazing. I'm looking at these numbers.
Think
I'm
about
saying,
it.
This is
Everybody knew somebody who
Yes.
was affected by it, who died, who got sick from it. Was there a cure? Did people live from it?
it
50
just finally just
took
died
its
out.
course and died out
Yeah,
somehow.
it killed enough people, and
Did people get sick from it and live?
yes. Okay, I've got numbers for that if you'd like. The population of Leominster at this time, September of 1918, was about 19,400, give or take, and you had altogether about 1,700 cases of the flu, of which 175 died. So that's where the numbers are. But the flu, for some reason, it was a very mutated strain. It attacked people that were 17 years of age up to 30 years of age.
Isn't that strange?
Yes.
Yeah.
So who do you think it attacked the most? The doughboys going over to France. And this is how it went over there.
Right.
And then it came back because they were going from Brest, France,
Right.
and the Americans had to reroute the ships and get them back into Boston, New York.
Right.
And they brought the flu with them, and then it wound up over at
goodness.
Camp Devens, and that became the epicenter. And this is where all living hell broke loose, and approximately 600,000 Americans lost their lives.
Can you
More
believe
souls
that?
than the HIV has in 42 years,
Can
whatever.
you believe it? I mean, just in such a, I mean, people must have been devastated.
10 months.
Just not figuring out. It probably at one point looked like it was going to wipe out society.
Yes.
Or a generation of people. It must have been
2%.
scary.
2% of the whole world population
Imagine
died.
that.
Now, this is 10 months.
Right. That's what I'm
You know.
saying. It must have been like people must have been afraid. Did you find records where they just would hide and
you like
stay
to
away
go
from
that up?
people?
Well, Mayor
Run around with
Sartell, your
masks and-
predecessor, Mayor Sartell,
Yes.
exactly 100 years, had to take some very firm action, and he implemented a number of measures.
You got to point him that way. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's a U.S. Army base in France during the First World War, and you can see what they were doing. They had
Right.
all the doughboys were in the field hospitals, and probably about half of them died. You know, and that is Camp Princeton, I believe, over there. And this is where they're claiming the flu actually originated from, was the state of Kansas.
Really?
Yes, because apparently there is a great deal of swine farms out in Kansas and the bird migration patterns.
Yeah.
And that camp there had the first, in January of 1918, had the first cases, but no one died. So then it was dormant for about 7 months.
Really?
And then all of a sudden it came back, and then it hit...
And it intensified.
It intensified, and it finally got into the trenches of World War I. And as the now get this is interesting. The governments, of course, were all at war with each other. So the German Empire didn't want to admit that they had 100,000 cases of influenza in Berlin, or the British didn't want to admit about what was going on over in London, so everybody kept quiet about it.
Well,
you
because
know.
people would go there and people would panic.
It was also for war morale. You
Right.
understand how many people were dying each year in the First World War in the trenches. So the doughboys didn't want to be finding out that their family was getting sick and
Right.
all that. And the censorship, that's the word
Well,
you
of
might
course,
want
that
to
was,
use.
they thought that was the best thing at the time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So then the flu finally went down to southern France and then down into Spain. And the
Remarkable.
King of Spain got sick.
Really?
And
Did he
finally,
die from it?
I don't believe so.
So you could get sick from this and not
Yes,
die, because we had
exactly.
people in Leominster
Yes.
that survived it.
Yes.
The last person died in April?
April, yes. Yes.
Incredible.
But the King of Spain got sick, and finally the because Spain's a neutral country, so they were more open about it. And finally the press said, okay, we got to give this illness some kind of name.
Right.
And they said the Spanish flu.
Right.
And that's how it started. And the American doughboys were coming over, and the supply ships were going back to Boston and New York, and it just kept spreading and spreading.
Remarkable. 978-537-7760 is the number to call here at Inside Leominster. We're talking about the Spanish flu, and it's the 100th anniversary. And, why it's significant, it was a huge, just think of something like that today. Just think if something like that happened today.
Yeah.
The panic that would just go out, spread like wildfire because of the advent of the internet and
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, today, there'd be so much information about there. People would have it all distorted, and we wouldn't be able to find out. It would take the government, and then people would say, well, I don't trust the government. They're just lying to us.
Right.
And there would be panic in the streets.
There's some little vignettes that we talk about in the office, and one of them is incidents that occurred during that epidemic. And a story that was told to me by my dad and Cleto Piermarini, which is Carl's grandfather,
Right.
that these wagons like this
That's a Richardson.
would go through Lincoln Terrace asking the people to bring out their dead. Can you imagine
Just like
that?
the Middle Ages, I believe that's how
Just like
that tradition
and
started.
because there was a lot of death, and,
So they
and
had to,
this, this common grave that Mike is talking about at Evergreen
Yes.
carried some of those people.
Imagine that.
It's a common grave.
Right.
And-
And just put everybody in that same grave, because I imagine they were worried
Well,
about...
there are 24, 28 in that common grave.
29.
29.
So they
in
were
that
worried
common
about other people, maybe they're burying them, and that's still contagious or whatever? Or
Yes,
they
the
couldn't
undertakers
afford...
didn't want to touch the body, so
Right.
they would just pack them in.
grave. Well,
Literally.
I imagine the people were quite frightened
Yes.
too.
Very,
Well,
yeah.
they didn't know, right?
No
They
idea what
didn't
kind
know.
of virus it was.
Right.
And some of the
Just
history they referred to as pneumonia.
Yeah.
But later they realized it was influenza.
Yeah.
And to
So
tell
was it a like a
Oh,
pneumonia
it-
kind of thing, where
yes,
it
it
would
was.
hit you like a cold almost?
just
Somehow-
like pneumonia.
Somehow the
And bacteria.
lungs fill with water, and it's like you drown. And that's how it
that's-
got the majority of the victims.
That's tough.
Yeah.
A second vignette was told to me by Shanna McFadden. Do you know that name
No.
at all? She used to run the hospital, Leominster Hospital. And she came home from the service at the end of the First World War.
Right.
And she became head of the Leominster Hospital.
Wow.
Well, she spent time with the doughboys, as
Yeah.
Mike refers to them, and they came down with influenza.
Right.
So she was very much aware
was
of it.
familiar
She
with it.
told me
Yeah.
that this photograph that I showed you on the hospital, that was
That's
was
what it
common.
looked like. So
Very.
just big barracks filled with
They were
beds.
that was a common.
Imagine trying to handle all. I mean, even today, trying to handle all that.
The U.S. government did not even handle the logistics properly because Camp Devens was only 1 year old when this started.
Oh, yeah.
And that was supposed to house only 35,000 doughboys, and they had 45,000 in there. And there were so many deaths, they had to convert the library into a morgue. This is amazing what they had to do.
Just incredible.
But your predecessor, Mayor Sartell,
Yeah.
he put both
Mayor
feet
Sartell,
down.
just so everybody knows, was the first mayor of Leominster. He owned a hardware store downtown. And he was the first mayor. And here he was, the first mayor of the city, and he's got to make a huge
In his third year
decision.
of office, he had to make some very radical decisions. By the last week of September to the second week of October, this entire city of Leominster shut down.
Really?
Period.
So that
Nothing
would
could
be
go on.
This time, 100 years ago.
Exactly 100 years ago.
So he shut it down, said
Ruth
nobody can go
Wakefield.
anywhere.
Ruth Wakefield was the first victim, and then Dr. Bigelow, who headed the Board of Health, said, well, we're not going to panic just yet.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, by September 27th, Mr. Perry, who was the school superintendent, said, we got to shut the schools down. They shut the schools down. And then by October 7th, the mayor said, everything has to get shut
So
down.
the thought was, don't move around, stay home, and you can't spread it, right? Until we
Yes.
get
And they
this
had
under
to wear
control.
that mask like
Yes.
there.
Yep.
And the other one he showed, we found.
That's the
is
Seattle.
Police Department.
Oh, yeah.
That's the
Same
Seattle
thing.
Police Department on the other side of the country, what they were doing.
All right.
So it was global.
Sure.
It was a global
And then,
catastrophe.
at some point, they had to get back and make a decision. Okay, it's okay to get back to regular life, right? They didn't wait 10 months to figure it out, right? They must have had to say, well, listen, we don't know how long this is going to go on, but wear your mask. And
Yes.
so everyone walked around with a mask. I mean, it's just
With masks.
incredible.
And there were also a lot of home remedies that, they're
Right.
old wives,
Right,
home,
right,
whatever.
right.
and-
Wise
But
tales.
garlic was a favorite. Their garlic would, because
Yeah.
they figured it was hitting the upper respiratory.
Right. Garlic will kill anything.
Right, so they were using that.
Jeez.
And but finally, just put up. But here's what Leominster did with. We don't have an actual blow up of it, but there was a building that stood between the city hall and where the Gallagher building is in the vacant parking lot. It was called the Domestic Science Building. And they converted that into an emergency hospital at the height of this epidemic. And then they had to convert another house over on Miriam Ave as the other emergency hospital. So it was just swamping Leominster.
Did people panic? Like, don't put that over here in my neighborhood, or, this is going to affect my kids, or you coughed on me? I mean, people must have panicked to some extent. This is killing a lot of people.
I believe one ordinance that they did have was no spitting on the
Oh, yeah,
streets.
yeah, yeah. Maybe that's where it came from, right? I mean, and then it must have been in all the newspapers every night, right? It must have been the lead story in every newspaper, right? How are we going to figure this out? So there was never a real cure. It just sort of worked its way out.
Worked its way out. And the other thing that they were theorizing, medical science and historians, is they had another flu epidemic in 1895. So the older generation had already been exposed to the flu. But although it was a different strain of virus,
Right.
so they had already built up the immune system.
Right.
So when this new, in 1918 hit, the older crowd was pretty much safe from it. So unfortunately, if you were 17 to 30 years of age, you were ripe, unfortunately.
That's why it hit so many of the soldiers.
Yes.
The right age. But talking about the soldiers, my dad was younger. He couldn't go into the service at that time, but he had an older brother, Tony, and Tony was drafted into the Army, and he would sneak into Fort Devens to see him, and he told all the brothers said, "You can't come. There's an epidemic in here.
Oh, he would
you
sneak
have
in
to
to see
leave."
him, yeah.
He would sneak.
Well, he
he
wanted to
wanted
see
to
his
see him.
brother,
He would
yeah.
sneak in to see him. Well,
Just amazing.
yes.
We're very involved with history, and a lot of people with common sense that like historical items would say, well, for such a historical health disaster, why don't we hear about this more often, or why was it just shrouded
'Cause it's
in
hard to
secrecy?
believe.
One of the not only was it not only hard to believe, Mayor, but this was the key reason. World War I was ending.
Yeah.
And the war to end all wars, these people had lost 16 million people
Right.
in the trenches and
They didn't need
civilians.
this.
So when November 11th occurred, Armistice Day, I mean, the entire world rejoiced. So although you've lost a couple of family members or a couple of neighbors to the flu, now at least you know that the troops are coming home from Europe, and it's cause for jubilee. Believe it or not, that's how they
Yeah,
perceived
that's how they
it.
felt about it, huh?
Yes.
Jeez, and again, imagine telling students in school
Yes.
about this pandemic and then about the war and how many people lost their lives in the war. It's just, even Vietnam, trying to explain to somebody young just what was going on, and then Korea, World War II, World War I,
Yeah.
and you just try to explain this stuff, and it's hard to fathom in their minds. Like, what? How many people? D-Day? What?
Yeah.
It's almost incomprehensible, right?
I believe it is.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just hard to believe because we have 2 or 3 generations now that've never experienced anything like that.
Well, Mike said there were approximately less than 20,000 in town at that time, in 1980.
That was the population.
And
1918,
we lost
yeah.
174, you said?
174,
174
1% of the
people.
population.
And many of them were young people.
Yeah, that had to be tough.
That's a tragedy.
Are there a list of people who?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes, we've
That's
got
what I
it.
thought. I remember they did that. We first identified that, and it was a big sort of event centered around that. I don't know how many years ago, but there was some publicity on this a while ago.
Yes.
Because this is that right at the beginning of the Evergreen Cemetery, right?
Yes.
Right inside that area. Yeah.
Yes.
I remember there was some press on that.
Yes.
But
Just
as an
amazing.
historian, I was trying to compare this even to the Black Death, because I think even in school we were taught about the bubonic
Right,
plague, Black
yes.
Death. So to summarize, that 1347, 1351, 100 million people got taken down in Europe, and about 45% of the European population got decimated, died. But that's so it was like 25 million per year. This is 10 months, 50 million.
That's incredible.
That's how I'm trying to convey to the audience, what these numbers are, and
It's
I just
wiping
kept
out a whole
on-
state.
Yes, yes.
And when we do our research, and Mike has certainly done a lot of research on this, actually, he's a businessman, but he loves to do research in the
Yeah.
office.
No, this is valuable to be able to pass on to the next generation that something
That's
like this
important,
happened.
yes.
And you know what? There's so many medical advancements today, right?
Oh.
I mean, even with AIDS, I mean, they couldn't figure it out at first. They had no clue. They had some ideas, but there's not a complete cure for it now, but it's managed much better, and people live longer even if they do get it. And there's certainly ways not to get it, right? It's preventable. So, at this time, we're talking 75 years difference in
Yes.
terms of technology.
Medical
Just think
technology,
these people,
right.
what they didn't have, right?
Right.
I mean, we're going back 100 years and think about technology and medical advancements. 978-537-7760. That's the number to call. We're going to go to photos of the week, if we could, and then we'll come back. But let's take a look at sort of where we've been for the last week. People like this. We skipped a week, and people are like, hey, what happened to that? Photo of the week, well, Wendy took a week off. She was on vacation, much needed, so we didn't have it. So I'm like, okay, we'll get right back to it. So first photo, whenever you're ready back there, please. There we are. Hey, talk about historians. There we are at Carter Junior High School doing the groundbreaking for the building. We're all thrilled about that building being converted into apartments and saving the skin of that building so that people that had memories of that building, 100 years from now, people will be able to say, that used to be the high school, right? The first high school in Leominster, junior high school. And so there it is, the groundbreaking. Big partnership, right? Took a lot of people. All our projects are really huge partnerships with investors and people who work hard to make their part of the project happen, right? We needed a historic commission on this to sign off, right?
We do
We
sign
needed
off.
letters and all kinds of support. So everybody you see there played a vital role in the restoration and preservation of a very important building that sat idle for, well, almost too long, right? Almost got to the point where it had to come down. Speaking of food, I smelled some food coming into the building. Let's go to the Food Truck Festival. What an event. I'll tell you, it gets bigger and bigger every year. The only problem is you can only eat so much. You could only eat so much. And it had great music, great food. And these are the kind of events, so when you were young and you remember coming down when they had lawn parties at schools, or the churches always had the church bazaar, or they had an event downtown, old-fashioned bargain days, remember that? The radio station would pull up and they'd have the hats on and popcorn going and hot dogs, cotton candy, bargain days. That's when everybody came out, right? Well, it's not the exact same way anymore, but here we are in historic downtown Leominster in historic Monument Square. And here we are with thousands of people coming down for the Food Truck Festival, right? So things changed a little bit, but yet, they kind of reinvent themselves and come back in a different way. So there we are. We had great music. We actually had a band that played all the Beatles music. They were great. We had another band that played more modern rock or more kind of classic rock. They were incredible. It was a great night. The weather was good. And thanks to everybody for putting these things together and coming down because, in these environments, everybody's happy and friendly. Isn't that great? Happy, in front.
Oh, definitely.
Let's go to another event that we had, Kids Day. There we are at Kids Day, another event, the last big event before school starts. We want to celebrate, summer, the end of summer, the fact that they're going back to school, and there we were. Jack Finelli always brings us a free ride down there, and most of the things that were there during that time were free, and we had free samples. We're giving away free watermelon, and again, just a great, great, great time. So thank you again to all the sponsors and the people that help to put this on, and it continues to amaze me how many people come to these events. Let's go up to Holy Family. They had their international fair, and there's always, they always do the pig up there. They always do the pig, which is, just melt in your mouth kind of thing. And so great music, great food, and again, another great event here in Leominster. And speaking of food and family, and this is event we tried, here we are on the south side of downtown, and there's Dining Under the Stars. And this was about probably 800 to 900 people, maybe close to 1,000. And we had fun, and you could buy a drink downtown, walk around. You could have all the restaurants participated downtown. We had lots of fun, and so I think what the restaurants agreed to is they're going to do one at the beginning of the summer and one at the end. So another event we added to the calendar of events, all community-based. And here we are at the North Street groundbreaking. I think people thought this would never happen. Here we are, MassDOT, Lieutenant Governor sitting there. And this is a project that is a combination of Leominster, Fitchburg, and Lunenburg working together for the benefit of the area. So they're going to start at the old Weather Vane, the old King's Corner. If you're coming up from Leominster, take a left. It's going to go all the way down to the Fitchburg Fire Station down there on John Fitch Highway. $8.2 million. And let's see, where else are we? We missed a couple of things there. Next slide, there we are doing the groundbreaking. And very happy about this. It takes a whole lot of people. It takes a whole lot of cooperation and hard work and effort to make this happen. And we want to thank everybody again. Take a bow on the stage because there's plenty of room and plenty of people to thank. And we go to Skincare by Desiree, right over there on Merriam Ave. I think it's 59, if my memory serves me well. And they have a really great, they have clothing in there. There's massage therapy. And couldn't have been a better day. Very proud mom and her daughter who are working in cooperation with each other in partnership. And they have like 3 businesses under one roof there. So great event. Let's go to fall. Oh, this is the yard sale. This is a citywide yard sale. We had, I don't know how many, 20 or 30 people participate. Great bargains there. And again, another great community activity that brings people together. And there's you see City Hall, how beautiful it looks.
Oh, it certainly does.
Can't thank,
the
the
flowers around it.
DPW, Sally, everybody that works in the Parks Department for the city, and Judy and everybody. All the people, a lot of this comes through donations. It just
front of the
doesn't
library,
happen.
too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So again,
Beautiful.
it takes everybody, right, to make these kinds of things happen. I said on the show last week, got an email from a guy that's been here his whole life, and he said, I never really go through town. And I was going to work, and I came through, and he said, I remember what people call the good old days. I remember the good old days when we had First National downtown and all the shoe stores and all the businesses and food stores and Savatelli's and buy a needle and buy a record player and records. I remember all that, and Grants and Newberry's, and I remember Park Snow's. I remember all that. And those were the good days. And he said, those were the good old days.
Brockelman's, too.
Brockelman's food. But it never looked this good.
Oh,
he
it's
said.
beautiful.
He said
When you drive
it never
through
looked
town,
good.
it's absolutely.
And we're hoping that downtown's going to come back. Cakes very soon. Peter Bovenzi's in the old Plymouth Cafe that used to be the old senior center downtown, right? It used to be the old rec center, right? It was the place where kids could go and they had pool tables and all that, going all the way back. Well, it's coming back as a restaurant, Italian restaurant, a coffee shop next door. So downtown's coming back. The buildings are still there. It's new faces, new storefronts. I love having my business downtown. Are there drawbacks? Is there as much room? No. Can I display as much as I'd like to? No. But you know what? There's some real positive sides of it, real fun things. So anyway, let's go to talking about celebration. There's somebody that lived through the flu, Mrs. Schofield. 106 years old. She is, you can go up, you know what? You should go up there and have a conversation with her. She was part of the Smiths family that owned all that long land on Linda Laugh. She was part of that family. Schofield's and the Smiths.
Yes.
And you should go talk to her because she remembers everything. She's a great resource. Set up the tape recorder, get the
Oh, my
camera
God.
going. She's
What about
just amazing. She lives up at the manor on the hill, which was all part of that Smith land. And you got to go talk to her. Just 106 years old. Rick Marchand, who's heads up the Johnny Appleseed Festival, said that the handicap parking for the Johnny Appleseed Festival is going to be between the First Baptist Church and the Unitarian Church, two historic buildings.
Good.
And you need a placard or a plate in order to park there, but that's going to be the area. So you'll be able to park there and walk right out into the festival.
Yeah.
So it's a great thing. All right, here's what's coming up, guys. Johnny Appleseed Festival this week, Saturday, September 22nd, the world famous Cannoli Fest. This started as a joke, So I was just going to get a couple of my friends, my Italian friends, sneak in a bottle of homemade wine, bring in some cannolis and maybe a little bit of the good prosciutto and a little bit of the good cheese. People sell it, but there's the good stuff. Sit downtown with maybe 20, 25 people, right, on October night and call it the Cannoli Fest. Little did we know this kind of started off as a spoof, would turn into this.
Yeah.
I don't know how many hits on Facebook and social media of people that are interested. Over 1 million hits. 1 million. Yes. It's insane. And people but you know what? It's fun. People can come for a common, something common. They get to visit you, eat a cannoli from here. Nobody minds. The lines will be shorter this year, we believe, because there'll be more vendors. The vendors are also set up. They didn't know how much to make for the first year. Well, they know. And we have a rain date. It's no, doesn't look like we have one yet. But anyway, if the weather is inclement, you'll be able to get your cannoli, and then we'll have warming centers. And October can get either way, right? But so far, knock on plastic here, we've always had good weather. The annual harvest weekend is at the 6th and 7th over at Shoreland Farms. Halloween parade is the 20th of October. When we get into November 7th is the Veterans Music Concert. Veterans Day is always on November 11th, right? Always, November 11th, 11/11/11, right? And the Festival of Trees, you got to start thinking about that. The Festival of Trees starts in the 19th of November. We'll have a Louis Charpentier's display there. And Small Business Saturday, November 24th. The Winter Stroll, December 1st, early this year, right? Think about, and the things that we tried to do, and I just got a couple minutes here, but think about when you were a kid and you got to see Santa, or you got to come downtown and look in the storefronts. People didn't have a lot of money when you guys grew up, right? There was no money in this town for
Park downtown
families
and walk around.
And the smallest thing, if you could make a purchase, and the smallest thing at Christmas time, or the smallest gift, you didn't have to have a tree full of things. It didn't even have to be the best tree, because when you were a kid, it looked like the best tree. You decorated it with things, and it was like, you remember it as the best tree ever. Those were the best. And if you could put a cheap plastic candle in the window with one of those little screw-in candles, that was the best, right? The best. And think about the impression that makes on you as a kid. That's lifelong memories. So what we've been trying to do for 25 years is we remember those memories as a kid. So when we do things like the Electric Light Parade during the stroll, or Kids Day, all we're trying to do is replicate that feeling, that special feeling that you get as a kid, that's larger than life, even though maybe it isn't. That Christmas tree downtown appears to be 100 feet when you're a little kid. It appears it has 1 million lights on it, right?
Yeah.
And that's all we're trying to do, and a chance to walk into a place like Allen's. It's been here for over 100 years, and some of the other buildings,
yes, it is.
right? And so, we see the look on kids' faces. And how many people said to me, I was a kid coming to these events, and now I bring my kid. Or how many people said, I remember coming to these events, now I bring, being younger, I bring my grandkids or my great-grandkids, and they get to experience Santa coming in on a fire truck. Maybe a little bit hokey, at some of these events that we have, but they're creating those lifelong memories that keep people here, that make people feel bonded and attached and connected to Leominster for a whole lifetime. It's what makes people, you know, on the day of the football game, get so excited and like, yeah, Leominster, get my blue stuff on, and they live 1,000 miles away or sometimes in a different country, right? So that's what we're trying to create with all these different events. Did we forget anything, guys?
Well, do you know where Sawtell lived, by the way?
I do, but I forget.
He lived,
Grove Ave?
no,
No.
he lived right next to the sausage store on Central Street.
Next to Chet's?
Chet's.
Down there at Chet's.
Right, that
Okay.
brick building right next to Chet's.
Okay.
That was the Sawtell building.
Oh. Is that where his store was? No.
Well,
That's
no,
just
no,
where he
no,
lived.
his store was
Downtown.
But he-
Downtown. Yes.
Downtown.
Because
down, yes.
you realize that part of town was a very nice
Yeah,
section of
yes,
town
of
at that
course,
time.
yes.
The mayor was, and we recently found that we didn't know.
You didn't know where he lived? You found it a street
And they
listing or
found
something?
That it was that brick building right next to
Wow.
Chet.
He was
Isn't that the
born in
best?
Bolton.
He
Bolton,
was, huh?
Mass.
So he
Yeah.
wasn't originally from Leominster? Well, he wouldn't have been because his family would have had him at a time when Leominster wasn't here, right?
Yeah.
And he sort of migrated here at a different time.
Those are the things we find, by the way, Mayor, and that we enjoy finding.
You know, you brought up the fact that that this young lady came back from the war and was the head of the hospital.
Yes,
One minute-
Sharon McFadden.
So we
Oh,
have to do
she-
one whole show on the fact that how many young entrepreneur women, there were in the city that you didn't find this all over the place. You'd have to go to New York City or somewhere like that,
Yes.
Chicago, to find, you know, places like Mrs. Nimes.
Oh, yeah,
Right?
Naime store, Mary Naime. Oh, well, on 3rd Street.
Ruth
She
Lee's.
was excellent.
Ruth
woman.
Lee was
Ruth
this,
Lee,
This was
Degrezelia,
cutting
of
edge. These
course.
people were these people were the fabric and the owners of their own business at a time when you didn't find many women in business at the
Absolutely.
time. And it wasn't just them. There were a whole slew of people down in downtown business, Leominster local businesses, that were the owners and proprietors of, you know, like I said, Ruth Lee, but there were so many others downtown that were, you know, were cutting edge at the time when it's mostly men, you know, that owned and operated the business, and maybe their wives worked there. But there's a list of them. We got to
We
do a
just
whole.
took it for granted, though, didn't we? Huh?
We just thought it was, but you know what? That's why Leominster, people in Leominster were so adaptable. Were so, you could move to Leominster and assimilate. You could be African American and
Oh, yeah.
you could be Latino. You could be. Everybody just came here. All immigrants came here and just melted in. This is a true melting pot.
Fit.
That wasn't always the case everywhere, right?
Fit right in very
Now,
nicely.
that wasn't to say that there was those prejudices in town against the Irish and the Italian and the Latinos and whoever else might have come to town. But people from Ghana come here, and people from Spain come here now, and people come from all over the world and come here, and it's never been an issue. It's never been an issue in our schools. It's never been an issue here. So we never thought twice about a lady who's the owner and the entrepreneur of a business.
There was one at Ciccolini, too.
Yes, that's right. Think about that.
She ran that store.
She was sharp as anything.
Yes.
And there were so many businesses in town. We could do a whole show on that some night. But we need to pull up some information just to get it going so we can have a little bit just to kind of create some thought. But Leominster was just filled.
Well, the
Filled.
people you named, they were.
And how many people went off the war and their wife took the business from here and brought it here. The guys came home, it's like, wow, you know, you did all right? You did okay. And keep doing what you're doing here because you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
But that wasn't uncommon at all here, and that's another piece of history here in the city, and it's something we never think about, right? We never think
Well,
about it
we took
because
it for granted. That's what we did.
it just
Just
happened here.
it
Until you
just
look
happened.
around, you're like, nah, this didn't happen until you were in, you know, big cities. So that's one of the great things about, you know, about Leominster, and it was just, you know, sort of common here. But just to wrap it up, great job, a lot of hard work pulling all this information together. I never realized how enormous this was, and think there was 20,000 people in Leominster, and how many died?
Well, there were 19,400 and of 175
All right.
did die.
That
Yes.
everybody in Leominster knew somebody
Oh,
who
most
died
certainly.
yes.
from
Most
this,
certainly.
right?
One other, wanted to mention one other thing about this mayor was how significant this was. The World War I monument that's right behind your office there, okay?
Yep.
There are 30 doughboys from Leominster that their names are up there, and you think that they were all killed in action over in France. No.
They weren't.
No, there's no Hollywood USA here. There's 8 of them died from the flu, and even 5 of them died when they were serving over at Camp Devens in basic training.
Never made it out.
Never made it out.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
What imagine
That
that,
is
huh?
sad. Yeah, but that's how badly it hit.
And you know what? And each generation learns, right? Just think what they learned from that. Just
Oh,
think
yes.
of the great pain that it caused. And it probably, I bet you we can find stories where it brought the community together, right? Where people got, it brought people closer. And, there's stories like that for a reason, I guess, right? To make us all appreciative
yes.
of where we live and the fact that things like this did happen and all the medical advancement that we had. And we sometimes laugh about how the doctor used to come to your house. Dr. LeBret would pull up in his big Cadillac,
Yes.
right? Come into your
remember that.
house, and he'd be there to check my grandmother out
Oh,
who
yeah.
had sugar diabetes. My grandmother had sugar her whole life. Imagine that. Her whole adult life she had sugar. So the doctor was always there. And, well, you know what happened is you'd come into the house, and he'd be there for her. What would happen? Right? We'd all come running
Oh, yeah.
downstairs. Dino's got an earache.
Everybody had to be
Frank
checked.
this.
Everybody.
Mark this. Can you check that? And oh, by the way, and I got this cough. Can you kind of, and that's what they used to do, right? It would
Line up.
line them up. He came for one reason, and it turned into
Yeah.
A dozen.
But it never bothered them, right?
No, the doctor took it for granted.
it's what they did.
Sure.
And it's kind of funny. And so during the Christmas time, I'm going to bring in Mr. Gibbons, was our insurance man. He sold insurance for John Hancock. And if I can lure my brother in here, my brother Frank still has, one of the things they used to give out during Christmas time is a Christmas carol book. A little paper Christmas carol book. My brother has one. Imagine that. So every year they used to give them out when remember the insurance man used to come to our house?
Oh, yes.
Our insurance man was Mr. Gibbons. And he used to come to our house, and you get all excited. Think about those little things. Here was this little paper thing printed.
Oh,
it looked
yeah,
like
just a
this.
little thing,
Had a
yes, I
little
know.
Christmas thing on the
Yeah.
front, and we got it, and that was like gold. That was like gold, something so small. And we still have it. Imagine that. We still got one kicking around. All right, they're waving at me back there. I'm getting nostalgic here, right? But that's what this show's all about. Thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you, man.
Ron, famous Ron Gerard's back there. Man, he's the guy on Facebook. Everybody.
Oh, yes.
He's got millions of
Everybody
things
knows
scanned in.
him.
Anyway, lots more to talk about the history of Leominster, but we're out of time here inside Leominster. Thank you for watching. Again, thank you for the whole crew at Inside Leominster. Good night. God bless you. Remember, the world is run by those who show up. You need to show up. Good night.